Taking a look more on the cryptocurrency space, though, it's these tokens that have been associated with our next guest that have been surging in popularity in recent weeks. Sam Bankman-Fried is the co-founder and CEO of derivatives exchange FTX, which just hit a record $400 billion in monthly trading volumes in April. And they're just 2 years old, this exchange, keep in mind. And that makes it now the world's fourth largest cryptocurrency exchange by volume. FTX also pledges 1% of its trading revenues to charities. The 29-year-old billionaire donated $5 million to Joe Biden's election campaign last year, making him one of his biggest financial backers.
Well, joining us from Hong Kong is Sam Bankman-Fried. Sam, good to have you with us. I'm just wondering, I mean, $400 billion in trading volume for you. And when you take a look at Coinbase, it's valued at $84 billion. I mean, when you take a look at all these numbers, is it cryptomania getting out of hand, or is it a reflection that perhaps traditional finance is now passé?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and thanks for having me. And I think there's sort of two ways you can look at it. In one way, which is sort of the pessimistic take, there's a lot of leverage in cryptocurrency markets. And, you have days like today where markets are down 5%, and, that some cryptocurrencies are down 10, 20%. And a lot of that is sort of the unwinding of leveraged long positions. On the other hand, the sort of optimistic take is that over the last year, the majority of global regulated financial institutions have gone from thinking that they are not going to do anything in crypto to having a mandate to do something in crypto. And most of them have not done anything yet, but they are planning to, and they are testing the waters. And so there's a real chance of really massive inflows into the space over the next few years as the big banks, investment banks, pension plans, mutual funds, and other institutions, start to find their way into the space.
I mean, yes, institutional investors are getting in, but it's still retail investors, individual investors. And we heard from BOE governor, saying that, if you're going to invest in cryptocurrencies, you must be prepared to lose all your money.
Yeah, I mean, that's true of anything. And, cryptocurrency has been more volatile than stocks on average. So it's sort of a bit more true of crypto than it is of the average asset. But, I think in general, whenever you put on a financial position that has substantial risk in it, you should understand that risk, and you should not be using more than you're prepared to lose if markets go down a lot. So, I think I technically agree with some of what he said, but, I think he was probably implying a pretty dire tone about the outlook for crypto, which I don't share.
Sam, what do you make of the surge in these altcoins now, the likes of Ether, Dogecoin, Binance Coin? They're basically outshining the likes of Bitcoin now. What does that signal to you?
Yeah, it's a few different things. When you look at Ethereum, I think some of this is actually, interestingly, more institutional. Some of this is likely institutions that stocked up on Bitcoin over the last year through GBTC and other assets. And I think some of them are now rotating some of their portfolio into Ether. And so I think that the story with ETH is actually a little bit confusing, and there are a lot of forces at play there. The story with Dogecoin is much less confusing. It's the same story that we saw with GameStop, and a similar story to what we've seen with Tesla, where there have just been massive global, inflows into it, a decent part retail fueled, the inflows into GameStop and Tesla stock, in a decent part by Elon Musk, and a few other sort of pretty notable backers. And, it sort of started out as a joke, similarly to some of GameStop maybe, but it very much is not one now.
Right. So it begs the question, is there actually anything fundamental behind these rallies, or is it just pure speculation at this point?
Yeah, I mean, with some of these tokens, there may be something fundamental behind them. With others, the answer is nothing beyond the fact that it is, a currency. And so on the one hand, no, there's nothing backing these, so to speak. But on the other hand, I mean, what is the fundamental driver of value for gold or, the euro or other sort of, assets that have fairly large, value that we've just imparted to it by, our collective imaginations? I mean, that's sort of how a lot of currencies work. And it's particularly true with a lot of cryptocurrencies. So, there's nothing outside of the fact that a lot of people now want Dogecoin that drives value to it. But, that drives value to things.
Sam, you get a sense that investors are adopting broad brush approach to cryptocurrencies. I mean, if you take a look at the increasing interest in Dogecoin, would that pose a risk, a threat to Bitcoin, which is supported by fundamentals and technology that people are keen on?
You know, there's been a lot of worries over the years about things making a run on Bitcoin, and nothing's ever quite made a serious run before. I would be pretty surprised if Dogecoin did. I think, you know, it's gotten a lot bigger, but it's still not close to the point where Bitcoin is. But I do think, you know, and Bitcoin does have this pretty strong incumbency advantage where, you know, just a lot of people kind of give it value because it was the first, because it has the most adoption. But, you know, that's not something that couldn't change. You know, that could change. And although we've never seen it get close, and to be clear, Dogecoin is nowhere close to doing that right now. You know, it goes up another 10 or 20x, and all of a sudden that story starts changing a little bit. And so, but you know, it would take more than just a retail swell, is I think what I would say. In order for another currency to really challenge, you know, Bitcoin as the biggest cryptocurrency, you can't just have, you know, meme-based investing. You can't just have retail in it. I think you would need to start to see large financial institutions pouring tens of billions of dollars into it, embracing it.
So, Sam, do you think that this is a good or bad sign, then, that we are seeing more of these tokens rise up in particular? And does the larger size of the crypto industry now reaching more than $2 trillion means that there is perhaps greater systemic risk if these markets actually pull back?
Yeah, I think it's mostly a good sign for crypto. And the reason I think it's a good sign for crypto is that it draws crypto closer to the forefront of finance, and not just Bitcoin as an asset that some people invest in through alternate means, not just something you find some ETF, you put Bitcoin in it somehow, you know, maybe some funds, some way you can do it. And then some people buy it as a gold-like hedge, but, you know, crypto and blockchain themselves don't see much adoption. That was sort of one path. But I think the thing that we're seeing right now is much more in line with crypto itself and blockchain itself becoming big. In all of its advantages and disadvantages, which I think is, whatever you think for the world, I think it's probably good for crypto. I do think to your other point that, you know, crypto is not quite at the systemic point for like global financial markets right now, but, you know, it's getting closer. And I think, you know, each year it's gotten closer to it. You know, I think frankly, you'd need to see another factor of 10 or so growth in crypto market cap for it to really get to that level. But, you know, obviously we've seen close to that in the last year. So it's not implausible that in the next few years we could get to a point where, you know, crypto plays a significant role in the, you know, global economic health.
Sam, we talked about how some people view Dogecoin as pointless. But when you talk to some of the funds out there, they say it doesn't really matter because as long as there is volatility,
yep,
they're interested. I mean, what's the risk from that?
Oh, the rate, it could go to zero, to be clear. Like Dogecoin, say what you will about it, is a volatile asset. And, you know, Dogecoin was trading at less than a penny not that long ago, and it's now at, what, 50 cents. So it's, you know, anything that you invest in Dogecoin, you know, I think you should be prepared to lose a substantial fraction of it if you get unlucky, if things go down. And I would certainly not suggest it as a safe investment. I mean, I would not generally give investment advice, but particularly caution, that's not the place you're looking for something safe. You know, a lot of people like the volatility, and certainly it's shown some upside over the last year, though. But you know, while it's not safe, I would say that doesn't mean that it won't have value. And just because there's a dividend stream for it, you know, or something like that, doesn't mean that it won't retain that value. And we've seen that. You know, gold is a good example, right? Like, gold's real core economic value doesn't come from its use as a precious metal. You know, in like machinery, like most of its value comes as effectively, you know, a store of wealth. And that's just what the world imparts upon it. And in the same way the world has seemed to impart upon Bitcoin, you know, trillions of dollars of value, there's nothing stopping that from happening with Dogecoin.
Sam, before we let you go, it's been a tremendous 2 years for you and for FTX. You're celebrating your 2-year anniversary. We just mentioned the $400 billion in monthly trading volumes that you're seeing on the platform right now. What's next for you? Are there IPO plans, perhaps, or even M&A that you're thinking of?
You know, I mean, we'd be crazy not to be thinking about those and not to be doing our due diligence. You know, I would say there's nothing, you know, there's nothing imminent And the other thing I would say is that, while we are often having, talks with prospective investors, and while we have made some acquisitions, and, I would not be surprised if we made some more acquisitions this year. There's nowhere in our roadmap is us getting acquired. I do not see that in the future of the company.